Avant garbage.
Silence, you funny fool!
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, those who lie betwixt. It is the return of Avant Garbage, the podcast nobody asked for.
No, hold on. The only podcast that takes 2 years off to do research.
Is that what you're calling it?
Yes, that's what I call listening to Come Town and not doing anything for the podcast for 2 years.
And there was a lot of stuff that happened between 2021 and 2023.
Name one.
The bulk of the Biden administration.
And that stopped you from podcasting.
Russia invaded Ukraine. That really hampered my ability to podcast.
Yeah, we had to take a couple years off. Just we were worried about the Ukraine situation for a year, and then it happened, and we had to sort of take a year of. We thought it was disrespectful to podcast during the mourning period. You know how many people died.
I also completely changed what kind of video essays I'm making, so that's kind of cool. So I started the incredibly niche channel of wrestling with the narrative, and you can at least say 2 of the videos are all right, because I think you've seen 2 of them.
Yeah, I've seen 2 of them. They're pretty good.
There you go. They're pretty good. That's the Hillary Clinton seal of approval.
I feel like you're doing an NPR voice. It sounds like you're trying to fuck the listeners.
I've been told that a lot.
I started a wrestling YouTube channel. Hi, I'm Michael Barbaro. Welcome to the Daily Podcast.
In case y'all don't remember us, I am, of course, the illustrious William Fancy Son. You may know me for...
Rappist.
A rappist. I make inflammatory tweets calling Seth Rollins a bum. And, yeah, YouTube videos. And if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Hillary Clinton. I tweeted 3 times.
Yeah, there you go. Those are his qualifications. So,
I'm sorry, I want to be honest. I may have tweeted again by the time you listen to this podcast.
Unlikely.
So it may be more than 3. It's possible. I don't want to mislead anybody. I don't want to let our listeners down if I was wrong about that. And I had tweeted more times. Yeah, I don't want to let our listener down. You know, that
one guy who commented that he really enjoyed the what was it, Nightcrawler episode.
Yeah, I think for a moment he got the feeling of like I'm on the ground floor of something that will become popular, and then he realized he picked the wrong horse. Yeah, you know, like he picked the horse with 2 legs and AIDS to win the race as an underground one. So hopefully that guy can really feel smug if our podcast takes off this time.
It doesn't always start out it doesn't always end up like Rudy, you know? Sometimes the guy never gets to go into the game. He never becomes a motivational speaker, you know?
Well, you know the meme with the guy mining the diamonds and he's just about to stop?
Yeah.
I think that's every person who didn't succeed, you know? They just would have...
Oh, I thought you were going to say every person who didn't listen to Avant Garbage during his original run.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Well, I think they're more just like subhuman mutants who ought to be... You know, we should do certain things to them.
I also think this room is sufficiently wacky enough to be a podcast studio, just given my decor.
I feel like I don't know who you are. You feel like a hipster, and you're saying your room is... My room's a little bit wacky.
All right.
I feel like...
Well, to a normal person, yeah. Well, to a normal person.
What do you mean?
Oh, it's just all nerd shit.
Yeah, but I feel like you... I don't know. I feel like you sound insufferable saying, oh, guys, I'm a little bit wacky, you know?
All right.
I feel like on a movie podcast, we're already dangerously running close to being douchebags.
I thought that was the point. We're discussing a Dutch film.
Yeah, but it's an English language film.
There you go.
So
there's Dutch spoken in it.
Is there?
In chapter 3.
Is that the language they speak?
Yeah,
it's Dutch.
So to introduce our movie, whereas some of the movies there was that Bigfoot movies nobody's ever seen.
Yeah.
Like we've covered Nightcrawler is like a fairly well-known movie in film circles. We cover Godzilla movies; they have their fan bases.
Has anybody heard of Godzilla?
No, never.
Okay.
But today we're actually covering truly a pretty obscure movie, in that I've never, looked up to see if anybody else had reviewed it, like anyone prominent, and I found nobody.
Nobody as prominent as us, at least.
Well, people of similar level of prominence to us, which is the sad part. And I could only find one interview from Guy Pearce talking about his role in it, which is fairly, helped. But, yeah, so the movie is Brimstone, which came out in 2016. It is directed by Martin Coolhaven, starring Dakota Fanning, Kit Harington, Guy Pearce, Carice Van Houten's in it for, 2 seconds.
Who? Where does he play?
Melisandre, Carice Van Houten. Yeah. So
I thought Carice was a boy's name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Dutch. They have weird names.
Yeah.
So, would you like to discuss how we found this movie?
I mean, we sometimes just late at night we're hanging out. We decide to watch a movie, and I think we had recently watched maybe some Clint Eastwood movies or something. We wanted to watch another Western, and so we were looking through the Western category. And we saw one. We're like, oh, this one has Kit Harington, and it's called Brimstone. We look at the trailer. Oh, that looks pretty interesting. Looks like sort of a dark, gritty Western that has Kit Harington in it, and it'll be fun. Maybe he's fighting some preacher guy or something. Seems like it would be dark, but ultimately a fun movie.
Yeah.
And then we actually watched it, and it turns out that almost none of those things are true about it.
Yeah, it was bleak. It was fucked up. It was way more of a you see the modern neo-Western you get, where it's like No Country for Old Men or Wind River or something, than it is the kind of Western we thought we were going to be watching.
Thematically, it's like that, and I'd say in terms of the actual production and structure of the movie, it's even further from a Western movie. It's more I don't know what the right word. I guess I'd say artistic. It's more art house, I guess, in the way it's made. I mean, a lot of the shots are just objectively really good.
Yeah.
They're not even stylistically niche. But I think it has a non-chronological storytelling, which kind of lends
non-linear,
lends to a more. I feel like I sound I feel like it sounds masturbatory, but a more sophisticated movie. It's less simple.
Yeah.
Then I feel like a lot of westerns they don't try to be more than just a fun basic story, which I think works a lot.
There's a few that truly trend, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, something like that. It's that shit is art, especially when you have that.
Well, it's still a very simple.
Oh, it's simple.
It's just got thematically and
it's just got so many little things going for it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's it does something very simple very well. It doesn't try to do more than that, whereas this is a movie that tries to do a lot more,
So, I had a little blurb just about the guy who made it, Martin Coolhaven, and that he's fascinating as a director to me in that he made a few Dutch films that were apparently well received in the Netherlands. He made this as his debut English language feature and made some money overseas. Nobody saw it here, and then he just hasn't been heard from since. And apparently he's just been researching his next movie. So maybe someday we'll be able to review the next Martin Coolhaven classic. But Mr. Coolhaven, if you're out there, make another movie, please.
So we're sort of the Martin Coolhaven of podcasting.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
We dropped our Bigfoot podcast, and then we took 2 years off to research. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched 2 seasons of The Sopranos to research.
I watched all of The Sopranos, so I'm a better researcher. MIT.
Watched all of Breaking Bad. Most of Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
All for research.
Watch out, 20 years for our TV show podcast. Another novel idea.
Nobody's done it.
Where we watch every episode of The Sopranos and give our commentary on the episode afterwards. Something that's never been done before.
Well, I mean, what I'd like to think with this podcast is what we're doing is that we're at least, with Brimstone at least, this is something no one else would cover. And if we, in that, like I said, there's I found 3 YouTube videos reviewing it. All of them have 800 subscribers.
Yeah.
Or if we're reviewing something that has been reviewed otherwise, it's something I think we could put our own spin on.
Well, I actually don't really think a movie review podcast is as saturated as people would think.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of podcasts just kind of styled themselves after Joe Rogan, and it's
Yeah.
just like X amount of guys talking in a room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a podcast that has a specific gimmick to it is not way overdone to the point where it's unnecessary, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about non-linear storytelling. Giving a synopsis of this movie is complicated because with some movies that everybody's seen, I can just assume you know the plot, but for this one, we very much cannot assume that.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to describe the plot out of order, like as it's shown in the
Yeah,
movie?
yeah, we should describe it as it's shown in the movie.
Okay, so we begin with chapter 1, and I cannot remember it. They all have biblical chapter names.
I'm pretty sure all of them. I know.
Because number 2 is Exodus.
3 is Genesis.
And 4 is, I think it's Revelations.
Okay.
I don't remember the first one is.
Yeah, all the chapter names.
Okay, so how would you like to, do you want to talk about the opening or?
Yeah. So it basically starts. I think the first scene is in a church. It's showing.
Well, even before that, we see we see underwater.
Oh, yeah. It's like a framing device. Like
Yeah.
somebody's telling a story about their mother is the framing. Like, oh, I never really knew my mother that well.
Mm.
I remember she was a fighter, and is telling the story of the mother. It's just a shot of water.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back into the framing device, and essentially the first shot is it's a church service,
Mm-hmm.
and they have like a new preacher from out of town who's stopping and giving a guest
sermon.
Yeah, a guest sermon.
And we're introduced to our main character for this chapter is that we have this wife played by Dakota Fanning, who is mute in this chapter, so she cannot talk. Her tongue has been removed, as we'll find out later.
Yeah.
That's why she cannot talk. I believe in this chapter she's referred to as Joanna.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Sorry. Will be explained. Her name changes quite a bit, so hence our confusion. But she is Joanna, I believe, in this chapter.
I think so.
And she has a young daughter, which is her daughter, and
it's basically, I can't remember, how young is her daughter?
Like 9 or 10, probably.
Okay.
And there's a son who's like early teens, who is her husband's son from a previous marriage, because he was at one point widower.
Yeah, and he's kind of a dick to her. I think there's like 2 different scenes where he's like, "She's not my real mom."
Yeah, and it's like, dude, calm down.
Yeah.
The dad, however, is a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
I legitimately cannot remember his name. Names are not like the main.
Jeb.
The second most important or perhaps the most important character does not have a name. He is just the preacher.
Mm.
So
probably some goofy shit like Jedediah.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they named themselves back in the day.
So what happens when this goofy happy preacher comes in here?
Well, basically, the wife is very, like, she immediately, when she sees who the guest preacher is, she starts to, like, kind of freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know why, at this point in the movie, why she's, like, afraid of him. But she really freaks out when she sees him. She gets sort of scared. Like, she doesn't, like, leave or anything, but she, like, kind of hides herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
She does that a lot in this movie.
Mm.
Where she kind of tries to, like, hide without hiding sort of thing. I hadn't thought of that. Because I feel like I've done that at, like, family gatherings before. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, basically, after the service, a woman starts to go into labor.
Mm-hmm.
And Dakota Fanning has to crush the baby's head to save the mother's life, because it'll kill her in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
In the process, because she's the, what do you call that person who helps?
Is it midwife?
I think it's midwife.
Mm-hmm.
She's the midwife for this birth. And the preacher, sort of, there's just a shot of him ominously staring at her.
Because I'll know everyone else leaves the church during the birth scene aside from the preacher.
And there's one other woman who's helping.
One other woman is helping, where the preacher is just up on his pulpit, just ominously watching as
Yeah.
the thing unfolds, and it's pretty fucking spooky.
Mm-hmm. And then, basically, afterwards, the guy who is the husband of the woman whose baby, she had to kill during the childbirth to save the mother, basically shows up and threatens to burn their house down. And he's drunk, and he's basically saying, like, you killed my son, I'm gonna kill you. And then the preacher shows up.
And he actually talks him down.
Yeah.
So he despite her being afraid of him at this point, the first real, like, action he makes that's of any, like, moral consideration is a good one, which will be, like, the only good thing he does in this movie.
Yeah, he convinces him to leave.
And go home.
And then he basically goes to the
family.
The family. He goes inside the house, starts talking to her husband.
No, the wife says, like, to her husband, when she communicates in sign language in this chapter for pretty much the whole thing. She's very specifically is like, do not invite him in, and then her husband almost immediately invites the preacher in.
Yeah.
And he goes in there and he has a discussion with the husband, while she kind of waits on the side, or waits outside, just listening in the conversation. And at one point, the husband walks away to go get something, and the preacher speaks to her because he knows she's listening.
Yeah.
And delivers a very ominous thing about how she's going to receive retribution for
what she's done,
past sins.
He says she killed a man.
And at this point, we've only seen the childbirth thing, so we're like, whoa, that's a little bit heavy for just that one thing. This is a pro-choice podcast. She did nothing wrong. But it's a little weird
until Rupert Murdoch wants to or no, the Koch brothers are the one. Yeah. Until the Koch brothers want to pay us to change our political views.
And then this will be a pro-life podcast.
Yeah, it'll be a Christian only pro-life conservative, a young conservative podcast.
It could finally become Christ's Zone.
Turning Point USA movie podcast.
Exactly. We'll just review...
So we're for sale if anybody wants to listen to us.
We'll just review Gina Carano's new movies.
Yeah, we'll review the Daily Wire movie about the school shooting and give it an 100 out of 100.
Absolutely.
Aren't they making some shitty Western? Like, it's like...
Yeah, it's starring...
Terror on the Prairie.
Yeah, it stars Gina Carano and Donald Cerrone.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it just... They just... Because he's called Cowboy?
I think so.
They let him on?
Well, I don't know. Like, wrestlers try to get into acting, and now MMA stars are trying to do that as well. But they also just, at least to be a professional wrestler, a lot of times you have to be a good actor. MMA guys get hit in the head for a living.
Yeah, it seems like less of a connection because part of your job is acting as a professional wrestler. But, I mean, obviously it's the best guys, like a Conor McGregor, are kind of playing a character. Or at least they're playing up shit to sell pay-per-views. But a lot of guys don't do any sort of thing to be more charismatic.
And Randy Couture's in The Expendables. So
yeah.
There's good for him. Where are we going?
Well, we were talking about...
Terror on the Prairie, buying our political views. Yeah.
Yeah. But what we were saying was he's basically telling her...
She's going to pay for her sins.
You're going to pay for your sins throughout your life.
And you're like, whoa, that's a little icky.
And then he leaves.
And it seems like the storm's passed. She's freaked the fuck out, and she says that, like, we need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And he's like, give me, like, a day or two. Like, and if you're spooked, which, once again, pro-husband move, because in most, like, horror movies, normally if the one person flips the fuck out, they'll treat them as delusional until something really, really bad happens. Person. He doesn't heed her words, like, as immediately as she's talking about, but he does treat her seriously, and he comes up with a plan.
Yeah, he says 2 or 3 days we'll go up to my father's cabin, which becomes important later that exists. But
Absolutely.
Basically, we'll go up north to my father's cabin, and then I think the next thing that happens is the preacher comes back during the night, and I want to speed this up a little bit.
Okay, this is actually it's a separate thing. The day she gets like knocked out and shit. In the morning, they find the animals have been slaughtered, and they initially think it's the husband of the woman whose baby they killed. Husband rides off to go do that.
To go talk to those guys.
Preacher locks Dakota Fanning in the barn and talks to her young daughter.
Yeah.
She gets knocked out. And
Dakota Fanning tries to escape from the barn and then falls and hits her head.
Wakes up. It's nighttime. Suddenly, she doesn't know where the fuck anybody is. Her husband thankfully finds her daughter. But, things start to become amiss. And
I think she takes her daughter into the house to check on her. And while that happens... Her husband goes into the barn, and the preacher disembowels him and ties his intestine around his neck as a noose and puts it like hanging him.
Yeah, and we still have no idea why the fuck he's doing this.
I mean, it's kind of cool.
It's...
Oh, you mean why he hates her?
Yeah.
I meant like why he did. I thought you meant like why he did that execution.
Well, that's
method.
For style points.
It's cool, man.
Yeah.
If you're gonna kill someone, you gotta make it fun.
The son has to mercy kill the dad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and essentially,
she takes her kids and
nopes the fuck out of there.
She heads up to the father's cabin,
and that's the end of chapter 1. We are left with a family's destroyed. There's an evil, angry preacher who's Guy Pearce, and we're going off into the mountains.
Yeah.
Chapter 2 is Exodus, and we open with this little girl who's the child version of Dakota Fanning. She's picked up by a Chinese immigrant family.
She's running like she has nothing on her, no shoes or anything, and she's running in the desert. She's almost dead when they find her.
And they take her, and as upstanding citizens do in the Old West, they sell her to a brothel, as one does with a child. And she's just kind of, and we'll find out why later. This chapter, I don't know if did I say it was Exodus is the chapter?
I think you said that.
Yeah, wander through the desert. But she seems like not as devastated as one would be being sold to a brothel.
Yeah.
Almost like this is like the second worst thing that could happen to her, as we'll find out in a bit. But she grows up. Do you want to just fast forward through?
Yeah, basically she grows up. She becomes friends with another one of the prostitutes.
Whose name is Joanna.
And she devises a plan to get out by doing a marriage service where you basically sign up to marry somebody who needs a wife, and
some frontier guy.
Yeah, you go over to them. So she does that. And she got her tongue cut out for biting one of the customers' tongues.
The other girl who's
Joanna.
The real Joanna.
And so the brothel owner had to cut her tongue out as like a retribution because the customers were going to riot. Mm-hmm. So at this point, Dakota Fanning can talk. Her friend has her tongue cut out.
And we'll just call her Dakota Fanning because of the name thing.
Yeah. So the real Joanna develops that plan to do the mail order bride service thing and get out of there, escape.
And she's also planning to kill the pimp.
Yeah, she's planning to. But I don't think she tells Dakota Fanning that.
She strongly implies it.
But she's going to kill Frank, is the name of the pimp. She's going to kill Frank and then leave. And nothing, like, all seems to be going well with the plan until the preacher shows up at the brothel. Mm-hmm. And he basically, he pays to see all of them. And he looks through all of them. He just picks Dakota Fanning. And he gives her a speech, like, I came here, you are the only way I can get to heaven. Like, I have to, I'm pretty sure, basically, I have to marry you to get into heaven, basically. He knows her, and she ran away from him, is basically established. That's what she was running away from at the start of the chapter. And he is basically, like, beating the shit out of her when the tongueless other one, Joanna, runs in. And she
tries.
She tries to fight him,
but he's freakishly strong.
He kills her,
or at least just stronger than a tongueless hooker.
Yeah, he kills her, but that allows Dakota Fanning to get a knife and stab him, and then slit his throat. And which you'd assume would have killed him, but we already know based on the other chapter.
Well, the way something I note that's beautiful is in the first chapter. He has his throat, looks like his throat's been slit.
Oh, he has scars.
And he has a scar in his eye.
Yeah.
And in the opening of this chapter, he only has the eye scar, I believe. And and he's now has his throat cut.
Yeah. And essentially, she flees the brothel. She cuts her own tongue out so she can pose as her friend, because she burns the corpses, or what she thinks are the corpses. Because she puts the preacher's body like in the bed, and she throws the lantern on them and runs out. So assumably he got up afterwards.
Yeah, because much like God, he's not dead.
Yeah. And if PragerU gives us the money to be a Christian.
Come on, Dennis.
Actually, Dennis Prager's Jewish, right?
Yeah.
So we'll become a Jewish pro-Israel podcast. But so she cuts her own tongue out so she can pose as her friend,
Yes.
and takes her place in the mail order bride service, and that's how she ended up being married to whatever his name was
Eli?
in the first one. That might be it.
I think it's Eli.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
So that's how she ended up being married to that guy in the first one.
And then, bam, the one with all the answers, Chapter 3, Genesis. And I will know about these chapters all are approximately an equal quarter of the movie.
Yeah, they're all pretty much quarter of the movie.
Okay, so take it way, way back.
So this one starts at the beginning, which is that she is the preacher's daughter. They live on some sort of small community. It's essentially a religious cult, a Dutch religious cult of
immigrants to America.
Yeah, who came to America, and he's the preacher in the head of their community, and his wife is what's her
Carice
name?
Van Houten.
Carice Van Houten.
Melisandre.
She's his daughter, and
Which
basically
makes it
he's mad at his wife
for not fucking him. Which is like, can we just point out, not a lot of attractive men in the Wild West. He's probably, Guy Pearce is one of the better looking men that are available.
Yeah, but he's a prick.
Oh yeah. But they're Dutch.
True.
This is an anti-Dutch podcast.
Yeah.
I just want to establish.
Most Europeans don't like them. And basically, he eventually spurns his wife, which causes her to kill herself. He puts like a
pretty heavy metal thing where she hangs herself from the steeple.
Yeah, during a church service. But he basically puts some sort of weird like muzzle thing that is locked on her head, like a weird kinky 50 Shades of Grey muzzle choker thing. So she's not allowed to speak.
Yeah.
And then she kills herself. And so he decides logically the only way to absolve the sin of his wife killing herself in the church is to marry his daughter.
However, there's been an undercurrent thing, or not B story, but there's been something else happening with his daughter. And so we're introduced to this young, strapping lad played by Kit Harington, who's Samuel.
I think so.
That's his name. And he and this other dude whose name I don't remember and maybe is never said. No, I think he introduces him to her.
Oh, okay.
But they are the only two survivors of this massive shootout. It's almost like the beginning of No Country for Old Men when Llewellyn stumbles upon that cartel shootout. And they ride off, and eventually they end up outside the farmstead, and the young version of Dakota Fanning's character lets them secretly stay in the barn while they're recuperating. And at one point, Kit Harington as Samuel. First of all, I like Kit Harington. He's a good actor.
His southern accent needs some work.
It needs some work. It wasn't like the worst accent I've heard in a movie, but it's not great.
It's pretty like obvious that he's doing an accent, and at points it pretty much completely falls away. And like he'll say a sentence that sounds like he's not doing a southern accent.
Yeah. But it's mostly a good performance by him.
It's mostly a good performance, and a plot that's important is that the other guy, they hate each other. They were apparently on opposite sides of the shootout, and they both are basically trying to kill each other, but they can't because they don't want to alert themselves to the preacher.
Yeah.
So then one day, because he doesn't know they're there, right? Dakota Fanning is keeping them there and hiding them. One day, the guy who's not played by Kit Harington goes to take a shit, and Kit Harington basically uses a noose and threads it into the outhouse and uses it to hang him while he's taking a shit by standing on top of the outhouse and pulling the rope up.
And young Dakota Fanning helps him.
Yeah.
By helping like tip it and like pull it off the ground.
Wait, does she help?
Yeah. She walks over and like she helps him get on top of it in the first place. And then at one point she helps like tip it to help the strangulation.
Yeah.
And he 100% snaps dude's neck dead. I don't know what they do with the body. I don't know. It's the Wild West. You can just throw him into a ditch. He'll be done with.
Yeah, pigs will eat it.
And also at this point, she's confused by her budding sexuality, considering that she's...
Is that a part of the movie yet?
Yeah, because the fact that she makes a pass at Kit Harington.
Oh, yeah. Well, basically... But this isn't until later, I don't think. But she tries to at one point.
Well, it's 40 minutes of movie.
At one point she tries to basically
initiate sex with Kit Harington.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, you're too young."
Yeah, which is like a rare like cowboy W. And that Kit Harington is like one of the better people in this movie.
Well, and also if you do the age conversion for the Frontier, she was like 60 years old.
Yeah.
You know.
it goes into my the Kit Harington good. Never mind. It's a tangent, too unrelated.
Okay.
But she is essentially the flash. Go back to where we were later on in the plot. The preacher, her father, basically he cites some scripture about like Lot and him marrying his daughters and shit for procreation. You know, generic religious bullshit. And he basically takes his daughter to the chapel to attempt to marry her.
And he puts the same weird head cage on her because she's like, "Fuck you, bitch! I don't want to marry you."
Yeah, I want Kit Harington, young stud, who totally doesn't exist. He's not in the barn.
Yeah.
He's not there. And Kit Harington, a cowboy, it's a great fucking shot. Where it's like all like white light as he opens the doors.
And it's during the impromptu marriage ceremony that the preacher is doing, and it's dark in there, and he kicks open the door, and it's like first the two people get lit up, the main girl and the preacher, and then it cuts, and it's like a pure beam of light into the church.
It's fucking gorgeous, and also just like he walks up and gives like a really good hero speech in that he's like, I remember my daddy was the same as you. He was a pervert. He was a bad man. I'm here to fucking kill you.
I killed him when I was 9.
Oh, yeah, he does say that. And he comes in with a cattle gun because he had expended his bullets earlier.
And earlier, the preacher made her slaughter a pig
with
using the cattle gun. So, guys, this is an example of Chekhov's gun. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but there's an example.
He comes up and tries to brain the preacher with the cattle gun, but he's freakishly strong, and so is able to turn...
Well, we see later, I don't know if we see it at some point, it actually may have already happened, but we see that he's freaking jacked in the movie.
Yeah. At one point we see him taking a bath, and he's, like, shredded as fuck.
Yeah.
Which, like, you see movie stars getting shredded for superhero movie roles. Guy Pearce must just be passively, like, a beast of a man.
Yeah, I bet he was already kind of jacked.
Mm-hmm.
No way you get that jacked to have your shirt off, because they could have easily written out him having his shirt off in that movie.
No, he just...
I think it was the other way around. I think it's like, we need a scene where I'm shirtless in this movie.
You know, I respect it, though.
Yeah.
Because if you're just some random actor and you're just, like... But he's, like, a weird, like, lean country shredded.
I don't know. He's pretty buff.
I guess he was pretty buff. It's one of those a sneaky buff where, like, if he has a shirt on, you can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of those weird cases. But he is able to turn the cattle gun on Kit Harington. Unfortunately, Kit Harington is killed.
Yeah.
And I think I was pitching he should have done an Imanari roll and gone for the legs to try to get a leg lock on the preacher.
Yeah.
I think that would have been
You were
effective.
pitching that.
I was pitching that.
I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah. I think it would. And the marriage is gone.
I think the preacher takes you easy.
Nah.
You come on.
Leg kicks.
Nah, he would fuck you up,
Calf
bro.
kicks, baby.
He'd grab you and choke you out.
You think you could take him?
No. He takes both of us.
All right. As long as you're willing to say that, sure.
I mean, I have a better chance.
What's your strategy?
Huh?
What's your strategy?
Double leg, ground and pound. Take him out.
All right.
How's he gonna do a stand up?
Derek Lewis style?
No. No way.
But unfortunately, the marriage goes through and is consummated the next night, which is icky. There's a lot of...
It's the rape counter. I don't know what the rape counter's at right now.
I don't think rape is ever explicitly shown in the movie, but it is heavily...
They show right after.
Yeah, they show right after...
like them laying in bed together and she's crying.
Yeah. So it's not like a movie you watch, like, with the family on a Friday night for good times.
I mean, if you don't want to speak to them again, that's probably a pretty good choice.
Mm-hmm. And we're brothers and have watched it twice, and we still speak to each other, so that really shows the strength of our relationship. But then she runs away while the preacher is sleeping, and that's what goes into Exodus.
He really didn't try very hard to keep her on his compound.
No.
Like, he could have chained her to the bed.
Fucking amateur.
Yeah. I feel like if this is his only salvation, he's not trying very hard.
Mm-hmm. But it basically explains for the rest of the movie, his kind of idea is that, like, if he's fucking his daughter, he's going to hell. Unless it's married, then God said it's okay to fuck his daughter. So they have to be, like, live as a married couple for it to be okay with God.
You know what I just realized?
What?
Wouldn't it have made way more sense if she ran away while they were fighting, so Kit Harington's death meant something to the plot? And it would make sense why the preacher let her get away, because he just kind of seems like an idiot that she just ran away in the middle of the night and he didn't do anything to keep her there.
I guess so. Maybe he just didn't think she would.
Doesn't that kind of solve like two issues with the movie?
Yeah.
In that he obviously should have expected her to try and run away in the middle of the night, and she just got away with it. Like he put his wife in like a cage.
Yeah.
He wouldn't chain her like to the bed while he's sleeping or something.
The other issue being Kit Harington going out like a punk.
Yeah, well, him dying makes sense. You
Yeah.
can't have him beat
Heroically
him
save
because
her.
we already saw that plot. But if he died while fighting him, but she ran away during the fight,
His
then
sacrifice
that would
means something.
make his sacrifice. So I think that's one of the biggest issues with the movie, is those two. It's two blunders right in a row that you could fix both of them with one.
We still
small
consider
rewrite.
it a very good movie, I'll know.
It's still a very good movie. I just think those are the two biggest issues with
I
the plot.
agree.
Is it makes the preacher kind of seem like an idiot
Mm-hmm.
that he just didn't try to keep her at all,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes so it makes him. It doesn't really in the context of the movie, but if you think about it, it makes him kind of a less intimidating character.
Mm-hmm.
And it also makes Kit Harington's sacrifice,
A little less meaningful.
it not meaning anything makes it kind of an annoying plot beat in the movie.
Yeah. Especially because, I don't know, part of this is just because we've seen Game of Thrones, but I would just argue in general, Kit's a very likable actor.
Yeah.
So if you as a filmmaker have him in there and you're going to kill him off, you should probably use that as like some sort of ammo of like, it definitely makes me hate the preacher more.
Yeah.
But if it was a cool sacrifice, it would have more of an effect.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder what the whole point of that B plotline is at all, because it gets completely resolved, and then she just runs away normally. So you could have completely written him out of the script, and it wouldn't have changed how she escaped, right? So it kind of seems like a. The more I talk about it, that seems like a really big oversight, right? Because it's sort of. I feel like that's probably the weakest part of the movie for that reason, of the chapters.
Although the one thing it is, and this isn't like excusing the kind of the flaw there, I'm just saying that it is like a positive interaction with a male figure that like, because her dad is pretty shitty, even when he isn't being rapey, he's just like cold and weird and Dutch. It is like she sees him as, I think at one point she says like, I loved him, of like
Right after he kills him,
of like, that's her idealized, like, you know, cowboy Clint Eastwood hero who's going to save her.
But they don't really expand. They don't really do anything thematically.
No.
With like, there's not a lot of. Really, the movie doesn't have that much thematic discussion. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
Of. I mean, the idea of being haunted by your past or like trauma is sort of played in with the idea of the preacher basically being trauma that's haunting her throughout her life as she tries to move on. But I don't think they really do anything with like the sexuality aspect of it.
Yeah.
In a way that I think, why wouldn't you use this character to serve the plot better when he's not really doing anything thematically?
Yeah, aside from being charming.
Yeah.
It's like
Like,
oh,
it would make
he's
sense.
there.
It makes you hate the preacher more if you have an introduced likable character, let the audience grow to like him, have him die at the preacher's hand in a way that forwards the plot and helps Dakota Fanning escape, right? So it makes his death earned and purposeful, but it also makes the preacher a more hateable character, which they already did by having him killed off, but it makes his character necessary to the plot. Because I didn't think about that before, but that's really bothering me right now.
Hashtag justice for Samuel.
Well, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it honestly seems a weirder way to write it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, here's this idea the director missed. It seems like a weirder way to write it. Like, it seems like at some point, he had to have had the idea of having Samuel sacrifice himself to let her escape and decided against it for some reason I cannot understand.
Yeah. So that basically ends that chapter. And so now we finally caught up to the present where she's fleeing with the two children. Unfortunately, the preacher is a fucking cold-blooded sniper.
He's still hunting her. He shoots the boy. Well, he was kind of a prick. He deserved it.
You're gonna say that was a justified child?
Yeah,
murder?
like
On the record?
everything he says in the script is like, "You're not my real mom," anyways.
That's true.
He has like 5 lines, and that's all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show up at the cabin, and they're safe for like 2 minutes, and the preacher shows up and kills the dad. Who, remember, it was the dad's cabin they were fleeing to.
The
Her
dad
father-in-law.
her father-in-law.
And he kills him. He threatens her daughter, and she's like, "Oh no!" And he comes in the house, and he's basically he's kind of just standing there, and she lights him on fire and kills him.
Yeah, and it's pretty fucking sick.
It is pretty cool. This section is like there's not really a lot to summarize because most of it is action.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
It is good.
We're not gonna be as long-winded about this as we are about the other parts because not very much plot-wise happens. It's
just the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, she takes her daughter, and they go and they live a nice little life for a while. Before it turns out the husband of the wife she did basically the abortion on.
Yeah, the guy at the beginning who was drunk and almost burned down their house
has become a sheriff, and he comes in, and turns out there was a wanted a poster that was for Joanna, but it was for the real Joanna.
Because the real Joanna killed the brothel owner before going in to save her from what's his name, the preacher. Yeah. So they thought, and because she burned the corpse, they couldn't identify it. So they thought, I can't remember what her original name was.
Yeah.
But whatever
something Dutch.
They thought whatever her original name was died in a fire, and that Joanna killed the brothel owner friend.
It's like the worst kind of identity fraud where you steal someone's identity who has a shitty credit score.
Yeah.
Or like I guess like the Grey Cowl of Nocturnal or something. Like she went from her clean alias and she became the Grey Fox.
Yeah.
There's the obligatory nerdy reference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she is apprehended by the lawmen.
Yeah, and they're taking her on a boat. When she is all trained up and shit, she decides just to jump into the water and kill herself. And then they're shooting into the water, and oh my god, this is the shot from the framing device at the beginning of the movie. That's so crazy. That's so clever.
It's some of the most unnecessary firing squad action in the world.
Yeah, she jumps into the water with her arms and legs chained together and like 12 pounds of metal probably on her.
And like a billion pounds of...
Well, actually, probably more pounds of metal.
Pilgrim-ass clothing she's wearing.
Yeah, probably like 40 pounds of metal in the shackles and like a 200-pound pilgrim outfit. And she's sinking, not trying at all to swim. And they decide to fire into the water.
Yeah. And basically the ending of the movie is her daughter is grown up. And she talks about, which I think is a really pretty resolution to it, where she talks about how she always knew her mother as like powerful and like on top of things, and it really shows how she evolved from like very much a, I guess you say like a victim in her childhood, and she turned it around into someone who's now remembered by her daughter as like a really powerful, determined figure. And I think that's a really sweet way to end it.
Yeah, well, it's basically, I think I want to set the point at the time when we were listening at the end of the movie. She basically says, I remember my mother is like, basically, like in control of this badass. And I was like, that's funny because in the movie, she's almost never that. She's almost always barely avoiding and barely not getting murdered by.
And constantly being victimized.
Constantly being victimized by the preacher. But it ends up, her legacy, right, is defined by the fact that she was able to overcome him. So sort of she rewrites her own story by killing him, and sort of takes the power back that he took away from her.
And it is, I don't know, just we said it doesn't do a whole lot thematic, but if you talk about like escaping your trauma and that sort of thing, it's really pretty. Yeah,
I think that's the only real like thematic or allegorical reading of the movie that I could think of. Is the idea, and it's also literal. Like he literally represents trauma because he's the one who fucking molested her and beat her.
Yeah.
But basically, it's sort of childhood trauma, sort of, and basically the whole movie's about how that haunts you throughout your life, but eventually you can overcome it and not be defined by that your whole life. So that's sort of, I would say, is the message, the thematic statement of the movie, is that like the trauma you experience in your youth will haunt you throughout your life and affect you, but you have the power to defeat it and overcome it and basically not let it define you.
Upon this rewatch, I did find that very like I don't know if powerful is the right word, but like it was pretty.
I don't think it's a very powerful.
It made me.
movie.
It made me like smile at the end. That
Yeah.
like, that thematically resolved its way. And it's a very grim movie, so getting a smile at the end was.
Yeah, it's very surprising the movie has even a bittersweet ending. Well, you know, because she died, but also the daughter has a good life. She's escaped this. I guess it could also play into the cycle of like trauma and violence because her daughter has almost no baggage from that. So it's sort of she broke the cycle by killing the preacher, right? So it could play into that too. But like something her mother failed to do. Because her mother, I guess, is kind of a foil to her or a representation of the worst parts of her character, because there's a speech that Samuel, the cowboy, Kit Harington gives, where it basically says she turns the other cheek. Like, look at her. Do you want to be like her? She's basically, her life is horrible. So I guess that's another part of it is that she overcomes that part of herself that's represented by her mother of being meek and just trying to avoid the preacher and not fighting back. And by finally embracing the side of her that fights back, she's able to save her daughter from having to deal with that repeated cycle of like abuse, you know?
So now we've kind of finished off the plot. You want to jump around and talk about some of the aspects of the movie we find interesting? So the first one is Guy Pearce's performance as the preacher, and I have noted here you were talking about him as a slasher villain.
Yeah, interesting thing through a lot of this, until he's really explained in the third chapter, the first two chapters, he's sort of he seems almost supernatural.
And also in the fourth chapter, very much.
Yeah, also in the fourth chapter. He seems almost supernatural in a way where he's like constantly hunting her. He's like, you almost always, he just kind of, you never see him walk into a shot. You cut, and then they go back to the reverse shot, and he's now just there. Yeah. You know, he has this very slasher villain-esque quality to the way.
Very Anton Chigurh.
The way he's introduced. Yeah, but Anton Chigurh is still very human in the way he's portrayed, right? Like, mentally, he's like a crazy slasher villain, no morality type of guy. Or he does have some sort of code, but it's not a moral one.
But, like, he sustains, like, a gunshot wound.
Yeah, he gets hit by a car. We see him walk around places, you know? But the preacher almost, it seems like he appears. He, like, teleports into shots sometimes in a way that's really unnerving. And he has this supernatural quality to him that makes him a really terrifying villain, because you're not quite sure at the beginning. You're not quite sure, is he supernatural, you know?
And it also helps with this Wild West aesthetic that he's dressed like the fucking Undertaker, and he just looks like this ominous kind of dark.
And something I thought was really interesting, and this kind of ties into how good I thought just the filmmaking, the shots, the cinematography was, is I thought that Guy Pearce was like 7 feet tall just because of the way he's framed in this movie. You're almost always looking at him from a lower angle. He seems way bigger in scenes with other people. He seems bigger than them and more intimidating than them. And what I found out is he's 5'10". Yeah. Right? So I think it's impressive. And the second time I noticed he wasn't really that tall because I had it in my mind. But I think it's impressive that as a director or as whoever the cinematographer was who was able to portray him and in my mind make him this like much more taller, imposing figure than he really is. I think that is it speaks a lot to the level of, and I think this is a point I want to transition to, which is that the craft itself of the filmmaking, of like the way the shots look, you know, all that is really, really good in this movie.
Can we also just, before we move on to the filmmaking in general, please give some praise to Guy Pearce as an actor?
Oh yes, his performance is great.
Something in the thing I listened to of his interview, he gave like this little brief interview. He talked about how he was constantly like part of the thing of like the tension he holds and like all that is apparently throughout like almost every time he's on screen, he was apparently like constantly like flexing his muscles even when he was just like passively doing something else. And I think that's probably part of what gives him his like unnatural like serial killer shit, because like if you like look at his neck muscles at any point in like where they're visible, he's like fucking like flexing them, and they just, because we don't see them unflexed, he just has it like that, so it just makes him look kind of passively freaky whenever he's doing something innocuous. Yeah. And apparently Guy Pearce just you know, unbeknownst to us, is like purposely portraying himself like that, of like, it's almost like when an animal's trying to scare off a predator, and it like makes itself all big. But he's doing that the entire movie, and that may kind of play into your thing of him appearing so big.
Yeah, he appears much more imposing than you expect from a. I think he's 5'10", pretty average normal height. I think some of the people are taller. Yeah, I think the husband is a pretty tall guy. But he, in every scene that it's him with another character, he seems.
It helps that Kay Harington's like fucking 5'6" or something. Yeah,
he seems like a towering figure.
Mm-hmm. And also, I just love Guy Pearce does a good job, even if it's pretty one note for 3 of the chapters. However, once we get the more human side of the preacher, I think he portrays really good of there's nothing likable about him. But he is multifaceted in that you see the hypocritical scumbag that he is.
He makes a lot of sense as a character once you learn about him.
Especially at one point you see he's perving on his daughter, looking through the door. Yeah. And then when his wife walks up and sees him, he real quickly pops back and he's like, oh, wasn't doing anything.
Tucks his boner into his pants.
Yeah. It's he does he has a range in this movie of slasher villain to every gross mega church pastor in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's impressive that he's able to have that same character. Yeah. And that the force of vengeance that he quote unquote vengeance, what he's really avenging. Yeah. But the fucking evil figure he becomes is just a product of the fact that he thinks he's going to hell.
Yeah, it's interesting how they don't make him human in a good person or relatable way, but they make him human in just you can understand who he is as a person way. Yeah. That I think works as sort of transitioning him, because it helps you understand her character more.
Well, yeah, it's I think people use the word humanizing as if they're saying it's always good. It's Tywin Lannister is a very human character once you hear about his
father.
His father. That doesn't make him likable. It just means that you understand the reasons why the way he is.
Also, similar backstory to Okonkwo from Things Fall Apart. Yeah. Where all of his baggage and the reason. Reference. Yeah. The reason that he's all messed up. And even though he's objectively pretty much a prick in his actual actions, it makes you understand him more in a way that makes it more interesting.
You don't sympathize with him, but I would border say you don't really empathize with him. But you can at least acknowledge and understand what his thought process is, even if it's deeply fucked up.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of you kind of have to understand him to understand the character of the main character. Yeah, right, because
he raised her.
She's a product of this religious cult environment, so revealing that he's more of this skeevy, controlling, mega church-esque priest, those those televangelists that fly around in private jets, Yeah. He's sort of this skeevy, using religion as a weapon to get what he wants type of guy. And that helps you understand the main character more, because she's also kind of mysterious. Even in the brothel part, you don't know about her past. Mm-hmm. She's very mysterious. And this sort of unlocks that mystery of the characters. And I think that it's well situated in the 3rd part.
And it demystifies him.
Yeah, you spend half the movie, you keep this kind of illusion, both of these characters are kind of mysterious, and then you demystify them and understand their conflict right before it's resolved.
It's almost Joseph Seed in Far Cry 5 is this. Imagine if we understood the backstory of him being a piece of shit, saw the early days of him being a scumbag cult leader. Yeah. It takes the power away in that way. In a way that I find really interesting. And it also ties into the title, which is Brimstone. It comes from the phrase a fire and brimstone preacher. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, the opening sermon he gives is he's describing hell, what hell looks like, and he's you people don't understand hell. And his final words, if you remember, are he says something to the effect of hell is life without love.
He says that?
Yeah. Which I think ultimately might be him realizing he's lived a life without love. Yeah. And that maybe he's being released from hell when she kills him.
Maybe.
Yeah. But I just thought that the phrase fire and brimstone preacher, I know you've heard before. That's what he is, and that's the title. But yeah, if you want to talk about the filmmaking.
Yeah. Well, I think I covered most of what I was saying, but I just think throughout the movie I noticed a lot of beautiful shots. You talked about when the use of light when Kit Harington enters the church in the marriage scene. That's a big one.
It's fucking when Gandalf comes over the hill and the 2 towers and it's all bathed out in white. It's that kind of effect of regardless, it's that kind of effect where it's like over the top heroic like kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like music's about to start like going like he's coming in there to fuck shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of. Oh, you're talking about the shaky cam shot. I think you.
Oh yeah, when there's this scene where she has to slaughter an animal.
Pig.
Pig. And after she slaughters it, she's walking away, and
only shaky cam shot in the entire movie.
Yeah, the cam gets shaky, and I thought it was a good use of shaky cam is shit on because it's really often used in like a fight scene. I think the James Bourne movies and the James Bond, both of them, right?
Used it was just Quantum of Solace.
It was we watched like 2 minutes of the opening
and couldn't watch.
He was driving and the camera was shaking. It's horrible.
Which is funny because Casino Royale, the movie directly preceding it, was known for its really good long take action sequences. And I think they realized they fucked up because then the movie right after that, Skyfall, which we both, I think, love.
Yeah, but shaky cam is often used basically just to hide the fact that your choreography isn't that interesting for a fight scene. But in this case, it's used to reflect her mental state.
Which is really clever.
She's like having a mental breakdown after having to kill an animal and walking away, and it gets really shaky. And I thought that was a good use of a tool that's often shit on because it's used in a very normally in a bad way to hide your mistake, but in this way it's used to complement the scene.
Yeah, it's very much like when like a video game, a first-person video game is trying to show like there's an earthquake happening or something like that.
The screen starts shaking.
And you get the rumble effect if you're playing on controller or something. It's like that kind of thing in a movie, which I think is so clever because I feel like other movies could utilize that effect. I think they just don't want to use shaky cam because of the stigma.
Yeah.
But you can do it and be clever like Coolhaven was here.
I think that I would like to see that used more as a way to reflect like a mental breakdown or mental instability.
Have you seen that meme on Twitter going around, which is I altered my body from how God made it to reflect my altered mind?
I think I've seen that, but I don't really remember.
Grimes, Elon Musk's ex-wife, tweeted out a picture of her with a tattoo.
Yes, I have seen that.
Yeah. Changing the frame to reflect your altered mind. It's gonna be dated as soon as this podcast comes out.
I feel like it was kind of a reach.
Yeah. Too. Fuck you. Do you have anything else on the filmmaking?
No, I think that's. Cover crew. It's hard to really say because I don't really know that much about filmmaking. But just in general, it's very beautiful. I think if you go and watch it for yourself, you'll notice. Pay attention to all the shots.
Our filmmaking knowledge is somewhere in between average movie bro and film student.
No.
Or somewhere in there.
I would say mine is firmly at average person who gets pretentious about.
I think
movies.
because I'm not getting super I've done through broadcast journalism and shit. I've learned how to shoot things at least cinematography wise. I can at least I'll put mine there.
All right. Guys, did you know that a Dutch angle is when the screen is at an angle from the actual shot?
Fuck you! I'm just saying that I've put together video packages before. I understand. How shots work.
Did you use a Dutch angle?
Yeah.
Damn it! I was hoping you were gonna say no, and then I was gonna go not a real filmmaker.
Yeah.
But you ruined that one.
Yeah, it was it was an interview I was shooting, and this the room was really nice for.
And they were Dutch, so you did a Dutch angle.
It was really nice for B-roll because there was a bunch of instruments that are all shiny and shit, and I put it slightly off for the opening shot of the interview.
Did you know that Holland is actually at a 45-degree angle from the rest of the Earth?
It's true. That's where they're all fucked up. Once again,
that's where the term Dutch angle comes from.
This is an anti-Dutch podcast. The only good thing to come out of there is what's his face, kickboxer, MMA fighter,
Boss Rudin.
Boss Rudin. He's a hero. He's American though. He's an honorary.
We claim him.
Yeah, we claim him. He's too funny to be Dutch.
I said the same thing about Freddie Mercury. He's American.
Well, it's it reminds me of a story about the Dutch wrestler Malachi Black, where you're saying that they don't do professional wrestling in Holland because they're too serious and they only do MMA.
Okay,
There's something deeply wrong with that.
I have
country.
a question.
Yeah.
What the famous Live Aid concert?
Yeah.
Was that about AIDS?
No.
I thought it was about AIDS for a long time. Honestly, in my head, I thought it was because... Did Freddie Mercury get AIDS?
Yeah.
In my head, I thought it was he got AIDS and then did a concert to raise money for AIDS. That's what I thought it was for like my entire life.
It's an
And then
understandable.
I heard somebody
assumption.
reference that it was about like farmers, and I
Yeah.
was like, what? That wasn't about AIDS? That was very confusing to me.
Apparently, it was also a giant scam. I think.
Really?
A bunch of the proceeds didn't go to farmers.
But wasn't that like the famous? It was like one of the most famous things to ever happen. Was Live Aid?
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, why are they calling it Live Aid if it's not about AIDS?
Do you want to talk about the content of this movie?
The content?
Yeah, you're talking about like content and possible controversy.
Oh yeah. I think when it came out, there was some controversy over the fact that they show like kind of a rape. You know, like not really. They don't show it on screen. But they show right afterwards.
They imply a definite rape.
Well, it's not even imply. It's like
there was a rape.
There was a rape, and they show right after.
Yeah.
Like they're laying in the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of dumb to have I feel like whenever a movie touches any topic that's not that could make people uncomfortable, there's always some controversy generated around it, and I feel like
anything Tarantino's ever made.
I don't think there's controversy about every single one of his movies, right?
No, just most of them.
But it's sort of just dumb because it's like you have to understand what they're saying about the subject before the thing happens. I mean, it's like the famous Tropic Thunder thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like wasn't the idea is that Robert Downey Jr. was in blackface, but his character was a crazy guy who was method acting as a black guy, and the point is, isn't that dumb and crazy? How imagine how psychotic you'd have to be to do blackface as a method actor, right?
Yeah.
And I've never seen that movie, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Right?
That is correct.
And in this movie, the evil villain who gets murdered by the hero and is like a metaphorical representation of trauma and abuse itself.
Yeah.
Is a rapist.
Yeah.
It's like you have to think about what the movie is saying before you criticize it for touching a dark subject, because I feel like you have to allow like art movies, you know, in the case, Tropic Thunder is another example. You have to allow them to touch things that are taboo, because how are we going to discuss, like, isn't it the best place to discuss dark ideas is in like a movie?
Yeah.
Where it's like a very comfortable way to think about that type of trauma that people get, you know, without having to really delve into a deep dark place, right? You can sort of you can comprehend and learn a little bit.
It's still not a fun, cheery.
Yeah,
place.
yeah. But I mean, like the level of getting molested, that level of darkness.
Yeah.
You can sort of learn something about that human experience without actually getting molested.
Yeah.
So I feel like
which neither of us have been.
Yeah.
So learning experience.
I feel like I feel like I'm actually gonna molest you after this podcast.
Oh shit.
I feel like getting mad whenever a piece of art or a movie or whatever touches on taboo subjects is really dumb and short-sighted, because if you don't, it's obviously saying something everybody agrees on, which is that the villain who's bad does rape and is evil,
and that's murdered.
That's the main reason why he's evil. So the point is that a rapist is evil and should get killed.
The example with Tarantino I was just saying was when Django came out, and they're like, they had the N-word.
Okay,
movie.
did he need to make himself say the N-word in every single movie he was in?
No, but they're just talking about Django. It's like they kill all the white people in the movie.
I do feel like Tarantino engineered a situation in which he got to say the N-word in a New Zealand accent. I think he just something that he wanted to do.
No, I'm just saying generally though, the movie they kill all the racists.
Yeah, I think the use of the N-word is fine in that movie, but I think that the fact that Tarantino wrote himself as a racist guy who says the N-word a lot is kind of funny.
I mean, he also wrote himself to suck on the toes of what's her face?
Salma Hayek.
Yeah, Salma Hayek.
Yeah, but I'm just pointing out.
He's a wise man.
Also, in Pulp Fiction, there's absolutely no reason his character would say the N-word.
Yeah.
It makes sense in Django.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no reason that Jimmy would say the N-word in Pulp Fiction. I feel like he just really is looking for excuses to say the N-word.
I think it's just that, I was going to say pick your battles. So don't criticize Django. Criticize Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying. It does seem like Tarantino just really likes saying the N-word and getting away with it.
Yeah.
Well, which I guess isn't really that evil of a characteristic.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny in my opinion.
Yeah. So, do you have much else to say about the movie?
Did we hit everything on our notes?
We just have better than Pulp Fiction.
Oh yeah, I just thought it was funny. They're both told in an out of order storytelling.
Asynchronous storytelling.
Shut the fuck up. And I would like to. This is a better movie than Pulp Fiction. I honestly think Pulp Fiction is kind of overrated. There's kind of a circle jerk around it.
Well, it's not the greatest movie ever. It's
it's okay. It's okay.
It's mid to lower tier Tarantino.
Yeah. I feel like it's not. Well, I feel like it's not even top 5 Tarantino. Probably.
What's your top 5 Tarantino?
Yeah, I'd put Inglourious Basterds at 1, and then both of the Kill Bills is 2 and 3.
Well,
I don't know.
That's 1.
But they're 2 movies.
Okay.
They're 2 movies.
Okay.
I'd put them at 2 and 3 in some order. And what else would I put? I put Hateful Eight up there.
That's the hot take of our podcast. We both love that movie.
I'm trying to remember what other movies has he made.
Django.
I'd put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood above Pulp Fiction. I think Pulp Fiction is better than Django, but that puts it at 6 with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood taking 5. So already not top 5.
My list is nearly identical, except I think I put Hollywood over at 4.
See, this is the rule: is that you can't let 2 people do a podcast about movies without them devolving into their top 5 favorite Quentin Tarantino movies. That's the rule.
Yeah, well, that's always the issue. Is he's a good director.
I think people overrate him in the sense that his movies aren't very deep, but
They
they're
are
well
beautiful.
made.
Yeah.
I think they're well made. I don't really think they say a lot, but they're fun to watch.
But do they need to? Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. And I think people look for a deepness because they're well made, but really they're not very deep at all, but they're very fun to play to watch.
Do you have any closing thoughts on Brimstone?
I think it's very strange to me that it's not a cult classic. I feel like it seems like it should be a cult classic.
Yeah.
I think it's a great movie.
Maybe it's just a harder sell to be like, hey guys, do you want to go watch The Big Lebowski? Or hey guys, you want to go watch this Dutch rape movie?
If Rocky Horror Picture Show can get a cult audience, then I think Brimstone can.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Dutch cowboy rape movie is just like a hard.
But it's
sell.
such a less weird movie than a lot of cult classics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Also, how horror audience you can get in there.
Yeah, but it's not as fun as a lot of horror movies.
That's true.
It's like
there's that. What is it? It's what's it called? Evil Dead, the first one.
Yeah.
Where she gets raped by a tree.
Yeah.
You know, I saw an interview with the director who made that movie afterwards,
Sam
and he
Raimi?
was like, "Yeah, that was too much." Like when he made it, he was like, "No, I think there's a purpose." But then
he was like a college film student, so
yeah,
he was just trying to do
but
shit.
5 years later, he was like, "Yeah, I probably didn't need to have her get raped by a tree. That was probably too much." But yeah, I'd say it's surprising. It's not a cult classic. I think it's a really great movie. It tries very hard to be interesting and unique, and with like the structure of the story, you know, and thematically, I don't think it's very complex in terms of its thematics. But I'd say it has a decent sort of allegory for abuse or trauma that at least works. You know,
it's
it at
about
least
as
says
deep
something.
as most horror movies are.
Yeah, it at least says something. You know, I mean, obviously, horror movie is an allegory for trauma or grief is the oldest trick in the book.
It's about as deep as like The Babadook or something.
Yeah, I guess those are the 2 things horror movies are about, right? It's either about grief or it's about trauma.
Yeah.
But you know,
I just want to see a happy person get murdered.
Well, isn't that like a slasher movie? It's always the ones who are fucking who get murdered.
It's true.
So yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I have to say. You have any closing thoughts?
You said most of my thoughts already. I guess that ends our fucking season.
The big return.
Season 2, the debut.
Season 2, episode 1.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We have some coming. You want to preview some of our ideas?
Yeah. So some things we're thinking of covering in the future.
I would like to. My idea I want to work on is talking about a couple of movies that fit a common theme. Like I want to do movies that are too long. And I would like to, along with reviewing specific movies, have some ideas like that where it's a set of movies that all fit a common theme.
We will generally try to stay to the format though of a movie we feel is underserved in some way. Of course, some of them, like we've covered some so good it's bad movies that are underserved in that not many people have talked about them, but in a way that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. In this case, of course, a movie we think should be a cult classic.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why Brimstone will never be a big hit. I mean, I don't think
Dutch cowboy rape movie.
Yeah, it's too art house in the production of it. Not in terms of like the literal production, but in, I guess the story structure. Is sort of it's a more niche audience is going for, and in terms of the content being very dark.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why it's not a cult classic. It seems. I mean, it's really high budget for the amount of, and well made for. I mean, I don't actually know what the budget was, but it's very high.
A few million.
It's really high budget looking for the amount of recognition it's gotten.
It was made on a similar budget to Pulp Fiction.
But it's still way better.
I don't know about way better. It's better.
I'd say way better. I feel like Pulp Fiction kind of drags.
Yeah, a little bit.
Say, why do I need this whole plot line about him not trying not to fuck his boss's wife? Who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But some upcoming ideas. Psycho Gorman is one we were thinking about.
That's another underrated one.
Which I think the only people I've heard talk about it is Henry Zabrowski. That's the only person I've heard talk about Psycho Gorman. So that's another good one. Some Nick Cage movies will definitely be in the pipeline.
Yeah, we actually, our episode on his most recent film got lost.
Yeah.
But so you guys don't know that we're big.
Well, it's on his
Nick Cage.
His most recent film anymore.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
His Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
His best movie.
His best. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen all of them actually, so I don't want to make that because somebody will
so far
like what is it? Moonstruck.
Moonstruck.
How dare you? Moonstruck is my favorite. My mother died in the production of Moonstruck. How dare you say it's not the greatest movie?
Which shout out to our father for the fact that he's a man of very simple taste, but occasionally he'll pull out like a weirdly like deep cut thing.
Yeah.
Of his favorite Nick Cage movies are Moonstruck and his critically acclaimed Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's like if you asked for 5 movies recommendation, he'd be like, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Rocky, and Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, you're like, what?
Yeah, it's like most of them are like pretty normal, Yeah, that's what was big when he was a kid. Yeah. And then it's just randomly you throw in like a really not underground obviously, but like a more niche sort of pick.
But yeah, Nick Cage movies. I think low budget horror movies will be a staple of
we're gonna talk about Shutter Island, the greatest movie of all time.
That's gonna be a great thing of that. Also, did you co-sign the Creep films?
Oh yeah.
I think that's.
I want to talk about both of those in one episode because I think it's interesting to talk about how they evolved. But I definitely I'm going to force this to do an episode about movies that are too long. Spoiler alert! It's every movie. Every movie is too long.
Specifically, that there's a certain Italian director that may or may not come under attack.
Yeah, and you know what? This is not that Italian. Well, actually, there's multiple Italians who I have beef with. Actually, I have beef with every Italian, but for making movies too long, there's still multiple. But we watched a certain Gangs of New York yesterday, and I'm very on the movies that are too long. So that's a preview of one of the too long movies.
I think every Scorsese movie, bar Shutter Island,
which should have been 6 hours long, actually.
Yeah. Almost every Scorsese movie is.
Hey, let's not preview. I
was just gonna say it's about 30 minutes too long, and it thinks it's deeper than it is.
Yeah. Scorsese's never really made a deep movie.
He just thinks he does.
Well, Shutter Island's pretty cool.
Well, it's like the last fucking shot about in Gangs of New York. Yeah. Anyways, we will spare you from further Scorsese discussion until later.
Yeah, until I scream for 30 minutes until they send the dog catcher to send me to a sanitarium about how movies are too long.
And from now, I'll plug both of our Twitter handles will probably be in the description. And if you're a professional wrestling fan, go watch my channel. You got anything else to say?
If you think Pulp Fiction is better than Brimstone, watch both of them. And if you still think that,
write me an essay.
No. Kill yourself. But first, transfer all of your money to me. So transfer all your money to me and then kill yourself. Actually, you don't have to just think Pulp Fiction better. If a lot of you guys want to do that, I wouldn't be too opposed. So just leave a comment if you're thinking about committing suicide and want to transfer all your money to me first.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.